3, 2, and 1. Welcome to Moment of Clarity. It's an exciting time to be alive, isn't it? I realize it feels like everything's melting down, but that's exciting, right? Think about how boring it must have been back when things weren't collapsing. Oh, God. Just go to sleep. Nothing going on. Don't have to fight for your life or the world or society on a daily basis, man. Boring. So let's get going here. Thank you guys for joining. Please share this. I have an important topic to talk about. The stock markets have been up, right? I don't know if you've seen, there's been news the past couple of days. Stock market's going back up because Trump says he's now open to a stimulus deal, and so all the stocks start going back up. And they've actually maintained, there was an initial job drop at the beginning of the pandemic, but they've actually kind of maintained their levels despite the pandemic. And a lot of people are like, well, that's just great. That means society's doing well, right? No. And in a bit, I'll get to how the whole thing is a massive scam. But let's start with the initial points here. The reason Wall Street and the stock exchange, the stock market is doing well right now is because they know they will get bailed out. And they've already been bailed out to the tune of $4.25 trillion of guaranteed loans from the government. Just massive amounts of money just dumped into Wall Street. And Wall Street generally knows that will be the case. If things go wrong, they got Big Daddy there to help them out, right? He's always going to be there. He's always going to swoop in. He's always going to give them trillions of dollars. And the ruling elite of our society have come to realize that. Now, some of you may go, well, Wall Street's not just the ruling elite, right? Wall Street impacts everybody. It has to do with everything. It has to do with mom and pop. It has to do with their retirement funds. It has to do with all kinds of lots of people involved in the stock market. Well, first of all, 80-some%, I can't remember the exact, it's either 81 or like 84% of all stocks are owned by the top 10% of American society. And I would imagine that's similar in other countries as well. So really, they are not owned equivalently. It's not like your average person has a lot of money wrapped up in the stock market. It is a relatively tiny number of people, 10% of the population owning 80-some% of all stock. So yeah, really, it's not mom and pop in the grand scheme of things. It is the rich. It is the ruling elite. It is mostly the egregiously rich. I'm sure that the vast majority of that 80-some% is owned by crazy rich people, like multi-millionaires. So yeah, don't kid yourself and believe that all of America is invested in the stock market and we all benefit and whoop-de-doo. So bullshit. But Peter Joseph on his recent podcast reminded me of another aspect of it, which was it serves the stock market, it serves Wall Street to make sure that the average American is somehow tied up in it. So they can give you some kind of propaganda about how it involves everybody. And so that's when they started coming up with the retirement accounts and put it into mutual funds so that you can get a little percent of it increase as you grow older. And so therefore all of America gets, minimally tied in via some retirement fund or something into the stock exchange, the stock market, so that everyone defends it like it's a religion. And I'll get to more of that in a second. Everyone defends this thing like it's all, we're all part of it. We're all gaining from it. As long as it keeps going up, and luckily it keeps going up because every time there's a collapse, Big Daddy government comes in, gives them trillions of dollars. So it keeps going up. Okay, wonderful. So everybody's got a little bit of retirement tied up into it, or a lot of people do. I imagine that's less now than maybe over the past 40 years. It's probably getting fewer and fewer because you have far more inequality. You have more and more people with average savings around $0. So I don't think they've got a lot of money wrapped up in our stock market. But so now we have to get to the deeper issue of the stock market, the stock exchange, Wall Street, as we refer to it colloquially. And in general, if you look at Wall Street, and I've said this before, but it's very important. This is one of those things that's maybe not always topical, but it's always topical because it's not like every news story you're like, yes, that's it. But it should be talked about on a daily basis because of how fucking important it is. Wall Street, our stock exchange, is a Ponzi scheme by the dictionary definition. If you were to look up the SEC definition of a Ponzi scheme, named after blah, 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 Ponzi back in the whatever year, you can tell I did my research. No, but it was named after a guy named Ponzi back in, I don't know if it was 1920s or something, 1930s. But anyway, Ponzi, he got a bunch of people. It's basically a pyramid scheme. Got a bunch of people, right, to give their. Most of you know what a Ponzi scheme is. You get people to give their money in, and they get returns. Most of the early people get returns, and they go, "This is incredible! I'm making so much money by investing with this guy Ponzi. That's just wonderful." And they start telling their friends, "You got to get money in. Give money to Ponzi. He'll give you back. He's just sending me checks every month, $1,000." I'm like, "Holy shit!" And so a certain number of people are doing really well, and then. But that only keeps going as long as you keep getting more and more people to buy in. And that can go for a while. Bernie Madoff got it to go for fucking decades, right? It can go for a while. And then eventually, one day, it happens. One day, there's no longer enough people to buy in, or the stocks tank, and everybody starts to pull out their money. And all of a sudden, the whole thing collapses. Because it was never built on actually anything real. It was built on you take the money from the new people, you give it to the old people, and you keep doing that. And as long as more people are throwing their money at you, all right, it always works. Everyone's getting paid off as long as people keep coming in, as long as people keep investing. Otherwise, it collapses. Now, people look at Wall Street, they look at the stock market, and they have some misunderstandings about it, because we believe this American myth of what Wall Street is. That's started generations ago, and it was back in the early days. It had to do with a company needs money to get started, so they ask people to invest in them, and then you get a little back from their profits, right? That was the initial idea. You invest in them, you give them $1,000, and then they say, "Hey, here's how much profits we made. Here's a little fraction for you," and it goes on and on. But that, in our current stock market, our current stock exchange, does not exist. Almost never does it exist. Dividends are when they pay back some of their profit, and it happens occasionally, but it's pretty rare. It's the amount that's given back in dividends is a tiny fraction of what's going on in our stock market, which amounts to trillions upon trillions of dollars. So really, it's not that doesn't exist. I give you an investment and you pay me some of the profits. It's not there anymore. So what is the stock market then? Well, nowadays it is you buy a little bit of Apple stock or Google stock or whatever, and on their paper, on their stock, if you look into the fine details, which could be pages and pages and pages. For example, Google stock says if you're for one thing, you're no longer. I skipped over something. Also, in the earlier days, you get to have input into the company, right? You would sit down. They'd only have, let's say, 20 investors, and the 20 investors would come and say, "I vote to do this or this. I want this company, which I invest in, to behave ethically," or something. God forbid. Could you imagine such a thing? And they'd say that, and it would have some pull. You'd have some voting rights, things like that. That also almost doesn't exist. Very few people that own stock in companies have voting rights or have the ability to truly exercise them. So again, that doesn't really exist. So most people, what are they doing? They buy a Google stock, and Google actually, if you look in the fine print, if you buy a stock of Google, it says in the fine print that if you were to turn that stock into Google and say, "I want my money from you that I paid for this stock," they would have the legal obligation to give you something like 0.001 cents. They'd owe you like a tenth or a hundredth of a penny. So you buy your stock for, let's say, I don't know what Google stock it costs, $600 or something, $900, I don't know what it is now, but you give them hundreds of dollars for a Google stock, and then you say, "You know what, I'm done with this. Here's the stock. Give me my money." They would owe you like a penny or a piece of a penny. They'd cut up a piece of a penny. Here's a fraction of a penny. They shave off some penny shavings for you. And that would be what they legally owe you. So really, that piece of paper, that stock you have, is worth nothing, absolutely nothing, unless you get someone else to pay for it, to buy it from you, because they want to invest, because they're thinking, maybe it'll go up. So they buy it from you for whatever price. Well, okay, that's all nice and everything, but that's just a Ponzi scheme. It's just gambling. The dictionary definition of a Ponzi scheme is you buy in, the thing you bought means nothing, and you only get paid if more people come in and give their money, and then that's where you get your pay from. And so that's exactly the same as our stock market. There's really literally no difference in most stock that goes on. Now, occasionally there's, the dividends or whatever, but it's very rare. So really, this is a massive Ponzi scheme. And a lot of times it works out. People like to argue with this because they go, well, I made a lot of money on the stock exchange. I'm not saying you can't make money. You absolutely could make money. You could absolutely make money. Just know that it's a Ponzi scheme. It's a scam. Now, when there's a scam, people make money from scams. Half of our world runs on scams. I mean, scam artists are they make a load of money. Every day, people are running around our society scamming each other. So you can make money on scams. Just know that it's a scam. It should just be honest. It should say above the stock exchange, hey, we're a big fucking scam. Come on in. So these pieces of paper that we call stock are meaningless unless you get other people to buy in. Now, if everybody decided all at once, hey, I'm not buying in to, let's say, Google or something, then you're not getting any money, right? The Ponzi scheme is collapsing. You're not getting the money back for the money you put in because it collapsed, just like a Ponzi scheme. Maybe a good example is like, oh no, I was gonna say a good example is WeWork, but I think did WeWork even go public? Anyway, WeWork's totally collapsed, but I thought they were about to go public and then all the shit hit the fan, but I can't remember whether they actually went public. But so I clearly have not studied on some of these things like WeWork, or the price of a Google stock. But I get the fundamentals. And here's the thing, you can't say these fundamentals. The fact that I'm saying them right now is one of the reasons that I am one of the most suppressed channels on the internet, why, none of my stuff is shown to a lot of people anymore. And it's because you can't say these things. You can't say these things on mainstream media. You can't say these things in polite company. But it is true that the stock market is a Ponzi scheme, a massive one, worth trillions and trillions of dollars, worth trillions and trillions of dollars. And actually, now that I say that, worth, let's get into what it's worth. Worth is relative, right? A Google stock says it's worth a penny in the fine print. And so when we say Jeff Bezos is worth $200 billion, and I say that too, really what we're saying is if you take the worth of his stock, if he were to sell all his stock, he would have $200 billion. Now, I don't know how much he has in cash. I'm sure it's several billion in his savings accounts, but his stock is worth $200 billion. Now, this is a little bit incorrect. It's only worth that money once you've sold it. Because if the stock were to crash, obviously he'd be worth a lot less. So currently it's worth that much. Now, in general, this gives him a lot of power. This gives people a lot of power. So really what we should do, if we really, this would help with our stock market to make it a little more legit, a little bit, tiny bit less of a scam, is that it shouldn't be called dollars when it's invested in stock because it's not a dollar, right? It hasn't been sold yet. It's only $1 once you sell it. So really it should be called like padoodles. Bezos has 100 billion padoodles. And then once he sells it, now he's got $100 billion. And that way people would understand that stocks are not dollars. Stocks are padoodles, and padoodles are meaningless. Now, dollars are also meaningless until we give them meaning. It's in our minds. It's what we decide to make them mean. So it's similar in that way. But the difference is that a stock is not backed by the full faith in government, full faith and credit of the U.S. government, whereas a dollar is supposed to be. So it doesn't have a big government behind it, but in a way, the stock exchange does, right? The U.S., the power of the U.S., the stock exchange as a whole, not individual companies, although some of the bigger ones do kind of own our government, right? They very much own our government. Weapons contractors, big pharma, they own our government. But individually, a company could fail, and the government, if it failed, in a time that's not about a large-scale economic collapse, the government's not going to leap in and save it, so it's going to collapse. Its stock will collapse. That padoodle will be worth nothing. But in times of large-scale economic collapse, where you have our stock market crashing, Then the government comes in, and the big banks and everything know that that's going to happen. They know they are going to feed from a massive trough whenever there is hardship. They understand the shock doctrine that when this shit crashes, they make a lot of money. It all comes rolling in. They are not allowed to crash because they are the power of the U.S. government, and they own the U.S. government people. They own the legislature. They pay all of their campaigns so that they can own them to one degree or another. And this is the same reason you don't see any real big pharma reform or real healthcare reform that actually hurts the insurance companies as opposed to helps them. Obamacare did give a bunch of people health care, and it also got rid of pre-existing conditions, and it had some important steps in it. But the only reason it was allowed to do any of that was because insurance companies loved it. It filled their coffers with billions of dollars, and so they were okay with it. And from the get-go, Obama and his team knew we can't do anything to hurt the health insurance companies because they're too powerful. So whatever we come up with to give some people health care, it needs to be good for the health insurance companies. So now I'm getting into how all of these corporations own our government, which is absolutely true. So a lot of, because this is a Ponzi scheme, because Wall Street and Walmart, because Wall Street and the stock market and Walmart are a Ponzi scheme, a lot of what their worth is, a lot of those billions of dollars is, well, trillions of dollars, but billions individually, has to do with just what the brand means in people's heads. Like, that is the worth for a lot of these things. If you look at Elon Musk and Tesla, now, the last time I studied this, it was like a year ago, so I don't know if this changed, but Tesla, up to a year ago, had yet to actually make a full-on profit. They make profit on, certain things, but the company as a whole was not making a profit, yet it was worth billions of dollars. And if you bought into Tesla when it first went public, you sold out, sold your stock recently, you made tons of money. Based on what? It hasn't made a profit yet. It's based on the idea of Tesla, the idea of Elon Musk, the idea of what it will do one day. Uber and Lyft have yet to really make a profit. They're counting on dominating the market while they're losing money and creating a world where basically Uber and Lyft own all of our ride shares, cabs, everything. And so then they're planning on being very dominant. And at that point, they'll make a great profit because they will have monopolized things. But so now I'm getting into why we end up in this crazy monopoly system where companies can get people to buy in to the tune of billions of dollars in a long-scale, long-term plan of monopolizing a whole system. I mean, Uber, despite losing money, can buy out smaller rideshare companies, smaller scooter companies, anything that, food delivery companies, anything that competes with them. They can buy them out, get rid of them, and defeat their competition, despite the fact they're not making a fucking profit yet. Like, it's fucking insane. It's not even, people like to act like, oh, it's this great, competition makes for such a wonderful system. It's like, no, it makes for a fucking psychotic, sociopathic system that we won't get into all the other externalities about how much it destroys the world and the planet. But that's not fair competition. You get some fucking billionaire to buy in to say, oh yeah, I'll cover it. I'll cover it for, your expenses for the next 3 years while you buy out all your competitors and everything else. So they get these investors to buy in. They dominate the market. They become a monopoly, and then they make a profit. It's completely fucked. But anyway, my point was just that these brands are based on their wealth and their worth. The level of their stock is somewhat based to a certain degree based on just what people believe. It's not actually built on what they necessarily sell or how successful they've been so far. And it really comes down to this kind of, again, Ponzi scheme, scam artist dynamic of like, well, a lot of people just really love that brand name. They have good faith in Tesla. And speaking of faith, it is like a religion, isn't it? I mean, the stock market is, in a lot of ways, the religion of America. Because we don't all have one religion. Many of us don't have any religion. but we seem to agree on the religion of the stock market. A lot of us, probably a greater percentage than you have actual religion in this country, believe in the religion of the stock market. They have faith in the stock market. We have faith that it is this thing that's telling us how society is running, whether it's doing well or doing poorly. We have faith. And that's why me saying this right now, and there's a few people that'll talk about this, very few, people like Peter Joseph, people like Tom Liu wrote a great book. Don't worry, it's a short book. For those of you who are not big readers, it's a short book called The Ponzi Factor, which is, if you want to have all this described in detail, but again, short book in detail to you, definitely look up The Ponzi Factor. So there's a few people talking about it. But in general, it's not talked about, and it's not allowed to be talked about. Tom Liu actually took the time, because I met Tom Liu, very nice guy, but he was kind of naive in that he thought, he came from the Wall Street world, and he thought that, as did Peter Joseph, by the way. Peter Joseph had worked on the inside. He knows what Wall Street is, and he knows how ridiculous it is and how much of a Ponzi scheme it is. But same with Tom Liu. And Tom Liu thought, and this is adorable, honestly, thought that when he presented this book, The Ponzi Factor, and said, look, I've figured it out. I have studied all this, and it is a Ponzi scheme. And he thought that his ideas in this book and then putting that idea out there would have a powerful impact, that people and economists and corporate leaders would get together and go, oh my God, how did we miss this? We've created a Ponzi scheme and we didn't even know it. Or maybe at least that, maybe not the corporate heads because they're sociopaths, but the regulators, at least the regulators, the SEC and everything, at least those regulators would be like, holy shit, the whole thing's a Ponzi scheme and we're in charge of regulating Ponzi schemes. Oh my God, we've got to get to work. Holy shit, guys, we're working all night. Clear your schedules. We've got to take down the whole system because it is a massive Ponzi scheme. I just read this book by Tom Liu. And unfortunately, and again, like I said, it's adorable that he thought that it would create change. I would love for it to create change. But unfortunately, not only was it ignored by all of those so-called important people, the regulators, etc., but also when he would go to the official, chat boards inside investing chat boards or even on Wikipedia entries, and he would try and put forward these ideas and say, look, it's a Ponzi scheme, or look, the stock actually has no individual worth. It's if you read the fine print, it's worth a penny. It's not. So it's only worth what we believe it's worth. It's only worth whatever you get some other fool, some other rube to pay for it. He would go and he'd put these ideas into the official, the places where like more official traders and investors and things chat with each other and put forward their ideas and stuff. And they would get furious with him. They hated him. They thought he was a troll that was trying to, that was piercing their religion. And wasn't that an REM song? Losing My Religion. He was losing their religion. He also was banned from Wikipedia, from editing Wikipedia, because these ideas are anathema to the entire system, how it works, what it is. They can't even be discussed, because if they're discussed, if every day CNBC said, well, the stocks have gone up and Dow Jones done this and NASDAQ's done this, but we should also say there's some out there who believe that stock market's Ponzi scheme, and really it's not connected to the real world. It's just a giant gambling casino for the rich. Some believe that. We don't believe that here at CNBC, but just giving both sides of the story. If they were just to do that, if they were just to give that discussion, that argument, that debate, it would crush the faith in this imaginary machine. It would destroy the faith, because then people would start thinking about it and they start talking about it. So just having that seed of an idea, it's an idea virus that could fucking unravel the whole thing. It's like in the Matrix, when a bug gets into the Matrix and then it just spreads throughout the whole system and they're like, oh, fuck, just because of 1 0 instead of a 1, and now it's gone everywhere. That's what they're worried about. So they have basically forbid Tan Lu's book. They've banned him from editing Wikipedia. They banned him from Quora and other areas where people discuss these things because they can't even have the discussion. And so this is really a third rail of politics, of course. I've never heard a politician that was allowed on the debate stage say that the stock market's a Ponzi scheme. Some of them have said, there are a select few who've said important things, talked about military-industrial complex, or talked about how people are being exploited, those kind of things. Bernie Sanders said some of that, but never heard any of them say stock market's Ponzi scheme, because it is truly against the religion of the United States, which is against the religion of the world economic system. Because the United States has made sure to destroy any countries that have an alternate economic system. So we have the same economic system as most of the world. Many of the countries are on the petrodollar. And then also we've destroyed countries that were just not in our central banking system, so that we could make sure that our economic system dominates the world. And this idea virus could infect the whole world if it were to get out there. I thought today would be a good day to go through that again. I plan to go through it a lot, more, or at least mention it a lot more. I feel like it needs to become a common trope, a common meme that we mention, kind of like where people create those memes and they're like, Epstein didn't kill himself, it's just like random other stuff. And then also Epstein didn't kill himself. It should be also stock market's Ponzi scheme. Because I think people need to learn that. They need to know that. And it needs to get out there. Because, we can't, as long as we keep giving faith and belief into this machine that is destroying the planet, we can't change things. So the first thing people have to do is become informed enough to lose their religion. Like REM said, lose their religion of the stock market, of the Wall Streets. Okay, guys, thanks so much. I really hope you'll share this because, like I said, I am incredibly suppressed. I'm shadow banned on, most of my social media platforms. So for those of you watching this right now, you are the lucky ones that either are the, 1% of my followers who are actually told this thing happens, or you are the ones who actually have the energy and the fortitude and the tenacity to look up when my videos are coming out and really go see them. So like I always say, these come out every single weekday, except sometimes. But anytime you miss these, I know you're not going to catch them because they're not going to show you they're happening. Anytime you miss these, just go to leecamp.com. Almost every single day, you'll find something new there. Just the homepage. Take you 3 seconds. Add it to your fucking tabs and go every morning. See what the new thing is. Almost every single day, there'll be something new. Either my podcast, Common Sense, or my podcast, Government Secrets, Redacted Tonight, these Moment of Clarity videos. You're going to get something new almost every single day. So just run by leecamp.com every day, and that's the best way to do it. All right. Please hit subscribe. Please share it. Keep fighting.